Wildlife photography is one of the most demanding disciplines a photographer can undertake. Unaided, the necessary skills could take years to discover and learn. Michael Sewell is a licensed professional wildlife guide whose clients have included National Geographic and other film and television producers here and in Europe. His photographs have been published by the Sierra Club, the National Geographic Society, the California State Park Department, and in numerous books and publications. In 1990, the California State Department of Fish and Game named him Photographer of the Year, and his pictures took first place in 3 out of 4 categories, including Photograph of the Year. Let's take a look at some of the techniques Michael uses to achieve his results, techniques you can use to photograph wild animals in their natural habitat.
Wildlife photography means something different to everyone. For some, it may be photographing captive animals in a wild setting. For others, it may be simply photographing animals in a zoo. And still others, myself included, try to work with completely wild animals in their own habitat. Working in an animal's habitat, I want more than just its image on film. I want to record behavioral activities unaffected by humans, the vitality of animals living in the wild. I wouldn't trade one of these photos for 1,000 taken in captivity. Unfortunately, most of us don't live on the edge of Denali or Yellowstone National Park, where semi-tame animals ignore humans. This tape is not a travel log to beautiful places where animals eat out of your hand. It prepares you to photograph where animals are wary of humans. It gives specific techniques for reptiles, mammals, birds, and elusive predators, the hardest of all to photograph. I'll assume you already have a basic understanding of your camera and are ready for the next step, blending into the natural world of the animals you want to photograph.
Most photographers interested in working with wildlife will already have at least the basics of their photographic equipment. Those making special purchases should consider some of the following suggestions.
The most important tool of the wildlife photographer is the lens. There are countless different focal lengths and price ranges on the market. The lenses I have here include a 600 millimeter with a maximum aperture of f4. I have a 500 millimeter with a maximum aperture of 5.6. I have a 300 2.8 and an 80 to 200 2.8. One thing that all of these lenses have in common is they have low dispersion glass. This is the highest quality glass available and the single factor that will really affect the quality of your images. I highly recommend you purchase lenses with this type of glass. Another thing to consider is autofocus. It's handy when you're working with fast-moving subjects, but it's not an essential in wildlife photography. It really depends on your specific needs. Another tool that's very handy is a teleconverter. The only one I recommend is a 1.4 teleconverter. This goes between the camera and the lens and increases any lens that it's used with by a factor of 1.4. In the case of the 600 millimeter, it'll increase it to 840. It'll lose one stop of light. It'll be an 840 millimeter lens with a 5.6 aperture. There'll be a slight loss in quality of the images, but with a quality teleconverter like this, it'll be minimal. Another thing to bear in mind, if you're thinking about a large lens such as this, you're going to have to buy and carry a much larger tripod to support a big beast like this. In wildlife photography, it's next to impossible to get sharp images hand-holding a long lens. The basic rule for tripods is buy the largest tripod you can carry, or the smallest one that'll really stably support your equipment. I use a relatively small tripod, but I work down low even with the animals. I like to look them right in the eye. If I worked higher than this, I'd have to buy and carry a much larger tripod. Also remember, if you go with a very long lens, like a 600 or an 800 millimeter, you're going to have to go with a much larger, heavier tripod to support it. Make sure that's practical for you. Another thing that's very important is the tripod head. Multiple handled heads, such as this pan tilt head, force you to think about vertical and horizontal. They're excellent for landscape or flower photography, but for wildlife or action photography, nothing beats a ball head. One lever frees the entire movement of the head and allows you to track action easily. I highly recommend you look into a ball head for your wildlife photography. Another tool to consider is an automobile window mount. If you're working in one of the national parks or a wildlife refuge, you may see a lot of wildlife right from the road. Something like this would be an excellent investment.
Photographers working with wild animals can benefit from using specialized equipment. One of the most basic is camouflage. The ability to blend into the animal's world can make the difference between a day of wondering where all the animals are and one of coming home with rolls of satisfying pictures.
One of the most important tools of the wildlife photographer is camouflage. There are countless different brands and styles on the market, but I think one of the best is also one of the least expensive and also one of the most available. It's the Vietnam jungle pattern, which I have on here. It's very inexpensive, available at any Army surplus store. And the reason I think it's one of the best is it has very large shapes in the pattern, which I think help break up the human silhouette better than smaller patterns do. The other types of camouflage that are available are the hunter orange, which we have here mostly to demonstrate a mammal's lack of color vision. You probably won't want to wear hunter orange when you're out doing your photography. Another one is the dead pattern, it's called. And this is mostly colors of summer, browns and grays and tans. And this is very important when you're working in dry, dead vegetation. Now remember, mammals can't see color, but they do see shades. So if I wear a dark green pattern like I have on in dry, dead vegetation, I'm going to show up as a dark green bush, and my movement will show up more. And likewise, if you're in dark vegetation and you wear a dead pattern, you're going to be lighter and your movement will show up more. So do try to match your camouflage to the vegetation you're working in. Also, don't forget to camouflage your tripod and your camera as well as any exposed skin. I have on here mesh fingerless gloves that cover up the majority of my hand. The other thing that's very important is to cover your face. I have a mesh head net here in which I've sewn some glasses into, just the frames, and I've removed the glass. This works very well. Another thing that's also very important is a hat. You should wear a hat with a broad brim to keep the sun off your face. Otherwise, any shininess on your face or even shininess in your eyes will be picked up by the animals. I've also added some material on top just to give it a little more of a three-dimensional look. The same idea I use with blinds. I use this material that's also a military issue camouflage. I put this over my blinds and it gives a very nice three-dimensional look to it. So don't overlook camouflage because the animals won't. The world for most mammals is a world of scent and sound. We all know how important it is to be quiet when we're working in a blind, but we usually don't think about how important it is to cover our own human scent. Whenever I go out into the field, I always wash my clothing beforehand, and if you're a smoker, it's very important that you don't smoke the day that you're out in the field. Another thing I utilize is animal scents. These are derived from glands and urine and are available from hunting and trapping supply houses. I have here a number of different scents that I use, from mountain lion, wolf, and bobcat, as well as smaller animals such as fox and raccoon. These are excellent for covering human scent while you're working in the blind, and they also attract animals. Animal calling is a very exciting skill and can produce excellent results if you're good at it. There are countless different types of calls on the market. There are goose and duck calls, wild turkey calls, as well as deer and elk calls. There are also predator calls, which imitate the sound of a wounded animal and attract various predators. In addition, there's howling calls, which imitate a wolf or a coyote and create a border dispute, which can attract the local wolf or coyote into your area. The basic call designs on the market are the diaphragm call, probably the most difficult to learn how to use, the open reed call, the semi-open reed call, and the closed reed call. The closed reed call is a complete tube, and it's probably the easiest for the beginner to learn how to use. It's important to realize that animal calling done poorly can scare animals to the point where they'll never be able to be called again. So if you take up a mouth-blown type call, put a lot of practice into it and get really good before you get out into the field. An alternative to all that practice is audio cassette tapes. There are a number of these types of tapes on the market that make various animal sounds, and you can buy a small tape recorder to take in the field with you. Calling with a mouth-blown call is more effective because you can control every sound that's made. If an animal's responding but slowing down, I can quiet my call down considerably, or I can stop altogether. Or if the animal's starting to lose interest, I can change tones completely. Realize in animal calling, especially when you're imitating the sound of a wounded animal, you may call in a very hungry predator that hasn't eaten for several days, and you could be in great danger if you don't take care as to where you call from. Make sure your back is protected and you have a clear view of the area you're calling. There are several different types of self-defense that you can take with you into the field. Two of the types that I take with me are the foghorn. This is available at various boat supply houses and puts out a very loud blast. And the other is a type of animal mace that's available. This was developed to use against bears, and it puts out sort of a pepper fog, and it's very effective in deterring animal attacks. Factors that one may overlook that will affect the success of animal calling are seasons, weather, and lunar cycles. If the weather's very hot, animals tend not to respond. And likewise, if there's been a good rainy season and grasses and grains are abundant, there may be a large number of rodents, and predators will be less likely to respond. On the other hand, if you try calling after several nights of windy, rainy weather, you may have excellent results because predators don't have much luck during this type of weather, and they may be very hungry and respond to your call quickly. In addition, if you try calling after a full moon or several clear nights with a near full moon, predators may have had very successful nights and will be less likely to respond to your call. This is an excellent bobcat area. There's a lot of low brush in here. There's lots of signs of rodents all over the ground. There's a number of different species of raptors flying overhead. So we're going to go down here about 100 yards from the road and set up, and maybe we'll have a little luck. It certainly looks like a good area. Sometimes locating wildlife can be very difficult, and working with a second person can speed the process up. The addition of walkie-talkie radios can make things much easier. Also, once you've located animals, working together with walkie-talkies can help you photograph together on the project without being side by side. The type of radio I employ most commonly is the hands-free, voice-activated radio. You wear it as a headset, and you have both of your hands free for your camera. Now I'd like to show you two blinds I use quite frequently. One is a large blind that I've designed myself from a tent. It seats 3 photographers quite comfortably, and I use it often in my guiding business. I also have a small commercially available blind here that's also very handy. Now remember, you don't always need to use a blind as a wildlife photographer, but most animals have a specific territory that's their own. And if you can do a good job of stashing your blind next to an existing bush or under a tree and blending it in, it'll go unnoticed and you'll get photography that you wouldn't get otherwise. So it's worth using a blind most of the time. This is a great little blind. If this size will work for you, I'll show you how easily this pops up. Just like that. And it only weighs a few pounds. It's pretty easy to pack in. I've had 2 people in this, and it's tight, but as long as you're good friends, it'll work. And we've got 2 portholes here for lenses, and there's a drawstring on each porthole. We have another porthole here, and we have various windows around the blind. There's windows above here, can be opened and closed, and there's various windows on the sides as well. Another nice feature of this blind is that it has portholes right here at ground level. Say if you're on the edge of a lake and you'd like to photograph the waterfowl right at water level, you can put your camera down here and get some great shots. It's a very useful blind. It's also waterproof. There's only one improvement I think I've made, or addition, that I use with this blind quite a bit, and I'll show you that. This is a real inexpensive addition that you can do to a nice portable blind like this. It really makes it much more three-dimensional. This material is very handy. I use it all the time also when I'm constructing a permanent blind. Materials used by the military, they throw it over tanks and other equipment to hide it. You can get it at pretty much any Army surplus store. A chunk of it, 8 feet by 10 feet, should be around $25 or $30. It's very high quality though, and it doesn't rot with the weather. So it'll be around for many years. I've done experiments with this, with blinds without it and blinds with it, and it appears to me that blinds with this over it get accepted much quicker in an animal's habitat. And that's the essential thing. You're trying to hide. As you can see here, I've customized this piece of material to fit this blind, and I've cut openings here for my lenses. The windows continue to function quite well, and actually this material hides me even better. Also, when you're placing your blind, try to put it next to an existing bush or tree, and try to get some shade if you can, otherwise you may cook in the blind. Now I'd like to show you a larger blind that I've designed that's also very useful and can seat a number of photographers. This blind I've made myself from an old 5-man tent. I picked it up used for $10 at a flea market and had a seamstress put a bunch of holes in it for me, and I'll show it to you here. It weighs about 10 pounds. It's pretty light. And completely waterproof, just as any good tent would be. Now, I wouldn't go out and buy a brand new tent to do this with. If you can find a good used tent somewhere with a few rips in it, you can make a real nice blind. I've had a seamstress put several openings in it for lenses and also windows for me to look out of. And once again, if you have a need for a larger blind, this is a very handy way to do it if you'd like to take several of your friends out at the same time. Remember to pick the area for the blind very carefully. Try to take advantage of shade, not only to hide the blind, but also to protect yourself from the heat of the day. Also, when you get into an area, try to see where you're going to put the blind before you walk around the area. Spreading your scent around is not good, especially if you're working with mammals. Remember, the most important of all of this may be your own patience, but good technique can cut down on the hours you spend in the blind. Good luck.
Remember, when working with a blind, you want to walk directly to the location where you're going to set up your blind and not walk around the area spreading your scent, especially when working with members of the wild dog family, such as wolves, coyotes, or foxes. I try to set my blind up quickly but quietly. Once I've set the blind up, I wait for a few minutes before calling, just in case an animal has heard any noise. This allows the animal to go back to what it was doing and forget about the noise and the direction it may have come from. I noticed that vultures were circling overhead. They had responded to my calling. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a coyote quietly entering the meadow. I decided not to photograph right away because coyotes, unlike bobcats, usually run off immediately when they're photographed. This one seemed very curious, and my hope was he would come in closer. In an attempt to discover what was making the sound, the coyote tried to circle around behind me. Notice here, as the coyote crosses the path where the video photographer has walked through, he immediately runs off. Don't overlook their keen sense of smell when working with these wild animals. Now I'd like to show you a unique tree stand blind that I've developed that affords you the opportunity to photograph directly into the nests of wild birds. Although I show you how it's been constructed, any attempt to duplicate my design is completely at your own risk. This is not a manufactured product. Therefore, the producers of this video cannot warrant the safety of this design, nor the quality of your attempt to reproduce it.
We've looked at several typical types of photography blinds. Here we have something very different that I've made myself. This is a tree blind for the bird lover. And what I've done is I've mail ordered a standard deer hunting tree stand that's available through different hunting catalogs. And this is a pretty neat stand. The metal part is the tree stand, and it has a seat attached to it that's pretty comfortable, and it swivels. What I've done with some bolts and some large washers is I've attached a much larger piece of 3/4 inch plywood to it, so it's large enough for me to spread the tripod legs that I have. The way this attaches to a tree is it has a loop here with a lag bolt as part of it. And it puts a small hole in the tree. It doesn't hurt the tree any, and it's rated to about 1,500 pounds, so it's very secure. I have this mounted here down at eye level so you can see it, but typically I climb the tree quite high and I pull this up with a rope. And I've gotten some great shots directly into some nests that I never would have been able to photograph otherwise. Let's show you how quickly this can go up. It's as simple as that. It just hooks right onto the tree, and 2 or 3 people can jump up and down on this, and it's plenty strong enough. And what I've done is I've taken some electrical conduit connectors and I've attached them to the 4 corners. And I have typical electrical conduit pipe. It's quite lightweight, but it's pretty strong. This is very strong. From right to left, it'll rock a little bit, but in terms of up and down strength, I feel quite safe, even very high up in a tree. Now these attach into the 4 corners, and they're set screws which tighten them up so they won't come out with a screwdriver. Now the frame here is also electrical conduit, and this just sets on the top and brings all 4 poles together and creates the basis for our roof. This unit also has a safety strap that goes around the tree in case for some reason something would give way, which is highly unlikely. It attaches here, as I said before, with a lag bolt that's very strong, very secure. The unit also has a seat here that swivels and also flips up out of the way, which is very handy when you're moving around in the blind. I also have a strap that I put around the tree up at about this level that I put around my waist, just as added safety, and I highly recommend you have some sort of safety belt on if you're going to work up in a tree. Now, last but not least, what I've done is I've taken some camouflage waterproof nylon and I've created a canopy for it. This has several windows that can be opened and closed, and it has a snout for the lens on the camera. On the back, I have Velcro to open and close the back here, so once I'm in the blind, I can tighten it up. The entire canopy can be pulled in quite snug with the Velcro. I have a window here on the side. I have another window here that has a piece of mesh on it, and there's also another piece of nylon behind it, so I can open and close this window. Usually when I'm photographing birds, they have such keen vision that I don't use this window. I just look through the lens. This is the snout here, and the lens sticks right out here, and I have a drawstring that attaches around the lens. This is a really nice blind if you're interested in working with birds. I recommend you put it up in stages. Generally, I know where a bird is going to be nesting, and I'll come in and I'll put the platform in maybe a week or 2 before the eggs are even laid, and then I just leave that. Then maybe a week or 2 later, I'll come in and I'll put the poles in and tighten them up, and then the last will be the canopy. So the blind will go in stages and won't really alarm the bird. Another thing you may want to consider when building any type of blind, especially when you're working with a blind like this that's made for birds, which have excellent vision, is to vary your camouflage pattern. I have two different types of material here. One is smaller pattern, a lighter color, and the other one's darker with a larger pattern. And I think this helps break up this boxy look here for the animal, and it just makes it blend in a little bit better. So you might consider varying your camouflage pattern a little bit. There's nothing wrong with it.
Here we have another excellent example of a permanent blind. This blind's been up for about 2 years now, and most of the leaves have dropped off the cover, so it's time to do a little maintenance. I've picked a few bushes in the area, and we're going to nail some fresh brush to the blind. It's in an excellent location for several reasons. This meadow is the only break in heavy brush for over a mile, so it's the first place the local animals that have bedded down on the surrounding brushy hillside will move through. I have positioned the blind so the lens opening faces north. The sun rises behind it to the right and sets behind it to the left, so the area being photographed from the blind has good light from sunrise to sunset. Now that we know how to maintain it and we know why we built it here, let's go inside and take a look and see how it was constructed.
Welcome inside. As you can see, it's pretty roomy in here. The floor space is about 10 feet by 10 feet with a 7-foot ceiling on one end that tapers down at the other here. There's room for 3 photographers side by side on this wall here. When you cut your portholes for your lenses, make sure you line your camera up and put it at a comfortable level, because you may be sitting here for many hours. Another thing that's very important is to cut a window so you can see what's happening outside and where animals are moving around. Now, I cover the window up and leave this closed at all times with a mesh, a camouflage mesh mosquito screen that I can look out, and this cuts down on the animal's ability to see me. If you're working with birds of prey, it's important to keep the window completely closed and just work through your camera lens, because their vision is so keen they will pick you up immediately trying to peek out of the blind. And working through your camera is the best way to work with birds of prey. Let's go take a look at another blind now that's put in a completely different environment. Today we're in a beautiful marshland area right in the center of the Pacific Flyway. And to get good close-up shots, you've pretty much got to have a permanent blind. That's what we're going to build today, a blind that you can build yourself for about $200. And we're going to float it out a wall at a time with a little boat out to the island that we've chosen. So let's get started. One thing that's really nice about building a blind like this is you don't have to be real concerned about square angles and things like that. We're going to pay a little attention to that, but for the most part, we're just building it. And you don't have to be an expert carpenter or cabinet maker to make a real nice photography blind. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes to build the first wall. We'll show it to you here. This one's about 7 feet at one end and 6 feet at the other. It's a comfortable size, and the total blind is going to be 8 by 10. So we'll set this wall off to the side now and build the next one. Let's take it out that way.
We'll put the bottom cross pieces on later.
Yeah, we're going to do those out there.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to build we're not going to build 4 walls. We're going to build 2 walls and just connect them with some 2x4s, because there's just no point in getting that fancy about it. This isn't a room addition. Okay, wall number 2. We've put braces here at the top just to keep it from flopping around as we move it out to the location out in the water. And this is a good idea all the way around. It'd be nicer if we could put bigger ones longer, but we need to keep this area clear for our lenses at a later date. We're going to have room for several different tripod setups. So we've kept them up high toward the top of the wall. All right. All right, and the other 2 walls, we'll just tack these 2 together with 2x4s. We don't have to really build 4 separate solid walls.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, David, you won't even have to pull at all if you want to just balance and steer. If you can balance, I'll steer and pull. How does that sound? Hey, this is a piece of cake.
Hell of a lot better than making trips, huh?
Yeah, it's the way to go. Hey, it's a houseboat. There's a bunch of ducks out there waiting for us to build it. This is the spot we were looking for. Boy, that boat sure made this a lot easier, didn't it? I'll tell you. Okay, why don't we set them right over here? You're going to need your belt, and we're going to be just tacking this in place with 16s. So we'll be using 16 penny nails to put the 4 walls together, and then we'll switch to 8 penny nails when we put the 1x2 up there. You first. A little higher, we could have put a second story on this one. We'll do that in the sequel. All right. Okay, let's set her out there a little bit further. Okay, and go your way up toward the bush there. All right. Okay. Push against me just a little bit there. Come on. Right. Okay, we'll get the level and we'll level this up in a minute here. Throw me my tape, thank you. All right, so what is 8 feet? Yeah, we're going to need the level out here. Here's 8 feet right here. So the blind will hang over this spot here. We'll get the frame up and then we'll level the ground around inside of it. That'll be the easiest way to go. Okay, we'll level it when we bring the other wall up. See what we're shooting for here. It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, if one wall's higher, a little higher than the other, or, you know, it's just, as long as we've got good rain runoff and we build it solid. What I had in mind here, David, was that we'll set this other wall up and we'll tack our 2x4s on the top and on the bottom and move the whole building as one unit and move it around and get it level. Rather than spending a whole lot of time trenching out to level this wall with that wall, we'll rock it around as one unit and then sort of level it, clear the dirt away in the center as we go. It'll be a lot faster that way. Just square it up here, see how it's looking. Now that we've got the thing roughly framed, but not squared right, we'll use the 8s for that. Okay. And let's lift her up here. I don't think you need to move as much as I do here. Now that seems like that might work. And this is level according to this. Let's come this way a little bit. Okay. See, how's our floor looking here? Let's just check this. Yeah, that's nice and level right there. Just get her square and well. That's it right there. Go ahead and drive her home. That looks pretty good. Now it's still a little tippy because our ground isn't level. So what we're going to do is get a couple of stakes, and we'll drive some stakes around here and lock her in place, and then we don't have to worry about it. Okay, these are going to be our foundation here, and this will help to keep the blind from rocking back and forth. We're going to level the blind on the bottom here, and these stakes have holes through them. We can put nails through to level the blind, and it'll also just keep it from shifting. If our water rises out here and gets up to the blind, it shouldn't, but it may, then these will help keep the blind on the muddy hill here. All right. Looks pretty good. Let's line it up with one of the nail holes here. All right. That should hold her still, and that looks pretty close to level. Now that we've got the basic frame up and it's leveled up very nicely, we're going to take a pick here and level up the ground a little bit, fill in the low spots, and we'll have a nice level blind for our chairs and our army cot here for taking naps. All right, let's come back after it's rained. Yeah, without these cross members here, this thing would just be a floppy mess and it would be impossible to work with. The reason I wanted these cross braces up high here was because I knew we were going to need to leave room for our lenses here. And these we are going to have a couple lens openings here, so we have to, this one doesn't matter, we're not going to be photographing out of this side. There'll be a door right in the middle there, but here we need to just consider where we place these. Okay, we've built the two big walls, 6 feet on one end, 7 foot on the other end, and 10 feet long. We brought the two walls out, leaned them up, tacked them together as you see here, and we've put our cross bracing on to keep it level. Now we're ready to put the rafters on, and that's what we're doing next. Okay, it's important to stand these rafters up on their edge, otherwise they'll warp. Okay, as you can see, we have a pretty strong structure here. We've got all our rafters up. The blind is 8 by 10. We've run the rafters the 8-foot direction to save on material. And on top of the rafters, running the opposite direction, we have these 1 by 2 nailers. And they're 8 feet long. And they help stop the rain from puddling up. When we put a tarp over as our final roof, these nailers will help keep puddles from building up and make the whole thing a little stronger. Pretty solid structure here. I can't vibrate this at all or shake it any direction. This is going to last for many years. Eye level from there on, right out there. So let's figure our.
I want a little leeway to be able to pan up and down.
Oh, don't worry about that, Will. Okay, why don't you hold her right there? Pull it towards you. Yeah, this will be the final strengthening here. And with these all connected, with these all connected like this, these will be much stronger. Our burlap will staple to this, and then on top of that will go our tulies, and this blind will disappear. Okay, we've done 2 walls here with our 1 by 2 furring strips. Once again, very inexpensive material, that's why we're using it. And we'll be stapling burlap to the outside, and then we go over the whole thing with tulies. We'll be stapling tulies to it. But first I've got the 2 back walls to put the nailing strips up on. This is a very important step here because birds have excellent vision, and the coating of burlap will keep them from seeing through. We're going to put tules over this on the outside pretty heavily, but there may still be gaps, and this will keep any movement inside the blind from being seen by the birds. Birds also have an excellent sense of color vision, so we can't deviate much from the natural shrubs around here. All right, brushing up the blind is the only thing left to do now, and it'll probably be a little after dark before we're finished up. So let's come back in a month when the birds are here and see how the photography goes.
Welcome back. Once again, we're in the middle of the Pacific Flyway. The blind's been completely finished, and it's been about a month since we were last here. The birds have come in by the tens of thousands now, and they're completely used to the blind. We haven't been here at all and given them a chance to get used to it. We've also broadcast grain out into the water occasionally and have really brought them into this area. Let's see how they look. We've discussed the more conventional types of wildlife photography. Another option is using a remote trigger, either a pressure pad or an infrared beam, to trigger an automatic camera. For the last couple of years, I've been working on a system here that has a camera that I've built a waterproof case for and 2 flash units that are triggered with the remote beam. They're about 20 feet off the trail here, and the flash units are a little closer to the subject. What I've picked here in my area, I have a very remote wild area where there's no hikers at all coming through here. The system's been here for over a year, and I've never seen a footprint in this area besides my own. The other thing I looked for is there's 2 hills here on either side of me, and I'm in the low point between the 2, which is called a saddle. And for wildlife to go from one area to the other, they tend to be funneled into this saddle so they can pass over the lower part of the hill. So we're here in the saddle on a very well-used animal trail. The other thing that's nice about this trail is there's a natural formation here with the vegetation, which has created sort of a funnel, and they come right through and are funneled into this specific trail. So I have an exact spot where I can focus my camera, and we've gotten a lot of great shots. Let's take a closer look at some of the equipment and see how it works. This is one of the many monitoring units available for a remote system. This generates an infrared beam that the animal walks through, which in turn triggers the camera. This one's one of the more sophisticated ones. It monitors the trail and also gives me the time and the date that each image was taken, which can be useful, especially if you're doing a scientific project. It helps me a little bit because I have an idea of when the animal comes through. The other thing that's nice about this is you can set it to turn on and off at different times of the day. So if there's a chance of hikers coming through here, I can have it turn off at 7 in the morning and turn back on at 8 o'clock in the evening.
and pretty much just be on at night when I know hikers won't be coming through here. This is one of the monitors for the unit. The batteries have gone down on this, so I need to replace them. I want to hook both the monitors up to solar also, so I don't have to constantly change batteries. I've got some camouflage material here over the monitor, not really to hide it from the animals, but to hide it from the occasional hiker that might come through here. Both the flash units and the camera are powered through a rechargeable battery here. I have here a plastic food storage container that I've cut a hole in the bottom to run my wires through. This rechargeable battery is charged up by a photovoltaic solar panel. It's been out here for over a year, and I've never had to put a battery in either of the flashes or the camera. So what I do is I come out here about every 10 days or 2 weeks, and I just check my battery level, and it's up to just about 6 volts. It's kind of an overcast day today, but it's just under 6 volts. So it's doing fine. If you're going to put expensive equipment like this out in the field, don't forget your camouflage. It's probably the most important thing to guarantee that your stuff will be here when you get back out. It's been about a week since I've been in here, and I've got a full roll of film. The unit is protected from the weather I've taken a storage container here that's used for food normally and cut the bottom out of it. And I've also taken a camouflaged rain poncho and cut it up, and I've made a very nice little raincoat for the camera. And it's been out here for about a year, and it's been through some pretty heavy storms and has been fine. This is one of the 2 flash units that I'm using with this remote system. One of the flash units is about 6 feet from the camera, which is positioned about 20 feet off the trail. This is the second flash unit, and it's pretty near the trail here, positioned above to give a little different light. One of the problems I really had with flash at first was the sound, the recycling sound that a flash unit makes. Most animals can hear this and tended to stay away. I tried doing various soundproofing jobs, and nothing really works. So I've gone to 2 rather expensive flash units that don't make any sound. I have it well camouflaged here, just so hikers don't see it once again, and it's also in a waterproof container.
It's preferable not to disturb animals while photographing them, but due to the speed of reptiles and the environment they live in, most published reptile photographs involve some manipulation of the animal. It is not recommended by the producers of this video that you attempt to photograph poisonous snakes yourself. If you do so, it's at your own risk, and you should obtain expert assistance.
We've spent a lot of time talking about the larger animals, and I wanted to talk briefly about reptiles and amphibians. They're ectothermic, and they rely on the sun's heat to warm up and become active. I have a very large gopher snake here who is very docile, and I've had him on ice for about 10 minutes. This technique is very handy when working with a wild snake, because it can be very fast and difficult to keep in one location. Another thing I recommend is to bring your tripod right down to ground level. I think this makes a better photograph, puts you more on eye level with the animal. And also realize now that you're photographing a much smaller animal, so either an extension tube or a macro lens will be helpful in getting a good close-up photograph. Let's look at how to photograph a poisonous snake now without endangering yourself. As big around as my arm. He's got a really nice rattle.
Yeah, he does.
And he's an interesting face. He's like, I usually see him all green or all gray.
Really?
Yeah.
Just finishing setting.
So now he's going to want to get off of that pretty quick.
Yeah.
He's been on the ice for about 5 minutes now, and he's completely relaxed. But still, I'm going to use a pair of snake tongs. I really recommend snake tongs over a snake hook. With snake tongs, you can catch the animal in the wild when it's moving quite rapidly, and you're much safer. Let's take him out now and see if he'll sit still for us while we try to photograph him. This snake is considerably calmer than it was before. I really recommend you have help from a second person. It's very difficult to photograph a poisonous snake without some help. But as you can see, this snake is completely calm now, and it'll give us time to set up and compose our shot, focus, and be relaxed about it. Okay, now his tongue is coming out because I'm waving my arm here a little close to him. I'm still plenty safe. I'm a couple of feet away, but pit vipers sense body heat, and he's following up on the on it with his tongue to smell the air, and he's checking me out thoroughly, just as though you heard something and then you turned to look at it. He's picked it up with his heat detection there, and he's following it up by smelling the air. Whenever I'm photographing in an area where there's lots of rattlesnakes, regardless of whether or not I'm specifically looking for rattlesnakes to photograph, I wear a good pair of snake-proof chaps. And it's always a good idea to have a pair of these with your equipment. And a good pair of tongs for catching the animal and controlling it is really important. And last but not least is a good first aid kit in the field at all times that includes a snake bite kit. It's important that your photography be safe and fun, not just fun.
John Muir said most animals enter this world and leave it without ever being noticed. Nature has given animals unique senses to avoid being detected. This has always been a benefit in the past. In light of the rapid expansion of human populations, if animals continue to remain invisible to humans, their beauty and purpose in the grand scheme of things will never be known. These San Joaquin kit fox live in California. Their habitat has shrunk to a small fraction of what it originally was, and now they are on the endangered species list. As a photographer, I feel I have a unique opportunity to help educate people by giving wild animals a voice and showing the beauty of these animals in their natural habitat. In my opinion, one of the most urgent and valuable functions of wildlife photography is to bring the plight of endangered species to the forefront of public discussion. It is wildlife photography's most noble purpose to aid in the preservation of a species. Whether by raising funds or illustrating an informative article, the photographer can make a significant difference in preserving wildlife for years to come.